Well, to discuss all of this, I'm now joined on the line from London by Paul Melly, who is the Consulting Fellow of the Africa Programme at Chatham House think tank. First of all, Mr. Melly, I want to thank you for joining us here on France 24. Very good to have you with us.
Pleasure.
Perhaps I could begin by asking you, tell us a little more about Madagascar. Population 30 million. It really faces some challenges.
Yes, it's one of the poorest countries actually in Africa. And although it sits in a more tropical climate belt than the Sahel countries in the west of the continent, it faces many of the same challenges, and levels of deprivation, particularly in the south, are comparable with some of the other very poorest countries in the world. The south has suffered repeated droughts and food crises, and Madagascar's landscape has also been under huge pressure because of its biodiversity. As an island quite distant from the African mainland, it has, of course, this unique, rich biodiversity of fauna and flora. But the island suffered a huge amount of deforestation over recent decades, and that's put this wildlife inheritance under pressure, and it's also put at risk the island, to some extent, the climatic, the agricultural conditions, the island's ability to feed itself. So its main staple food, rice, it's very, very heavily reliant on imports at the moment. But politically, Madagascar does have a multi-party electoral system, a democratic system, albeit with some pressures.
Now, of course, France, the nearby island of Mayotte, is French territory, and the Comoro Islands used to be French, are no longer French. Madagascar was formerly a French colony. Can you tell us a little bit about this relationship between France and Madagascar, and especially about this dispute over what are called the scattered islands? They stayed French when many of the islands around there went for independence. Can you tell us what that dispute is about, what Madagascar's claim is, what France's claim, and why it matters?
Well, what complicates the situation is that the different islands weren't all brought under colonial rule, as it were, at the same time. They weren't all brought together as a single territory at the same time. So just as there is a dispute between France and Comoros over Mayotte, because Mayotte opted to stay as a French territory, and the other islands in the Comorian archipelago secured independence as the independent Comoros state. In the case of Madagascar, the scattered islands, which are not inhabited, so they don't have voters who can make a choice, if you like, about their future, but they are of environmental importance. They also have a slightly different sort of timeline as to the period when they came under French control. And so Madagascar is demanding that France hand them over, and France feels that its control of the islands is basically legitimate. But the French government has offered proposals. There's a sort of been a commission that's supposed to be exploring the options, for example, of co-sovereignty, where, for example, France would maintain some very small military presence, and especially an environmental presence to study their unique biology. And at the same time, Madagascar would be able to exploit some of the ocean resources, because while the islands are very tiny, of course, they are surrounded by huge tracts of sea under the principle of the 200 nautical mile offshore economic zones. And so what part of what's driving the Malagasy position is, of course, sovereignty issues and a sense of independence are one big factor, but the less spoken but equally important factor is the hope that the waters might, for example, contain oil or undersea minerals.
What do you think, we don't have a great deal of time, but what do you think might realistically come out of this visit on both sides?
Well, I think in terms of goodwill, the political climate is rather easier than in Western Africa. And so we probably will see a strengthening of the what you might call day-to-day trade and development cooperation. And France's memorial policy about the colonial era, the skulls of three important historical Malagasy figures who were killed by the French colonial forces, are expected to be returned very soon. They had been taken to France. But in terms of the island dispute, it's difficult to see an easy answer. And something else which has been on Macron's agenda and will be at the summit of the Indian Ocean Commission that he is going to attend with other regional leaders tomorrow. He's hoping that Mayotte could be admitted as a member of the Indian Ocean Commission, just as Réunion already is. But Comoros is likely to block that. So the successes are probably well planned in advance, and the really difficult, spiny diplomatic issues probably can't be unlocked this time, even if there's plenty of goodwill around.
It's really interesting. Thank you so much. I think that's all we have time for, Mr. Melly. Paul Melly there, speaking to us from London of Chatham House think tank. Thank you so much for your time.